It was late in the 21st century when Earth's quiet days ended the moment the sky cracked open. Humanity had never imagined the vastness of the universe beyond their own world, much less the dark secrets it held. The first ship appeared without warning, a massive vessel the size of a city dropping into Earth's atmosphere, as if it belonged there. It was not a meteor or a satellite, but something far more terrifying. The message was clear: they were not visitors but invaders. Commander Jessica Hale sat in the command center of Earth's combined military base, her eyes scanning the reports streaming in from all over the world. Every radar system, every telescope, every military officer, all confirming the same thing: alien ships were entering Earth's space, and there was nothing they could do to stop them. There were no weapons on Earth that could even dent their shields. Hale knew the odds were impossibly stacked against them. She'd spent her entire life preparing for wars that never came. When the world's nations collapsed into a fragile alliance, one thing became clear: humanity was weak and scattered. Their defenses were outdated, their technology primitive. The aliens had known this from the start. The Council of Empires, the largest and most powerful coalition in the galaxy, had no reason to fear Earth's pathetic military. As Earth's leaders scrambled to make decisions, Hale stood as the one voice demanding resistance. Her team was small, inexperienced, but desperate to survive. They had no choice but to fight against a foe that had crushed entire civilizations with ease. They had no time for strategy, no time for training, no time to wait for reinforcements. But the one thing Hale knew was that humans had something the Council would never understand. A fight had broken out in the streets of Geneva, the United Nations headquarters, once the most powerful governing body on Earth, now reduced to chaos as the planet's leaders fled or argued about surrender. Hale stood tall, a symbol of unity among the chaos. The aliens had come to Earth with one goal: to conquer and claim the planet as their own. But humanity had never been easy to conquer. Even in their most divided moments, they found ways to defy the odds. Their will to survive burned hotter than any weapon the aliens could throw at them. And Hale knew it was this spirit that might be the key to saving Earth, if only they could figure out how to use it. Hours later, the first strike came. The alien ships released powerful beams of light into the atmosphere, vaporizing entire cities with each pulse. Their technology so advanced it made humanity's best efforts seem like a child's toy. Hale's fleet was too small, too unprepared to fight back. But she had a plan. The Council underestimated human ingenuity, and that would be their downfall. Hale's fleet wasn't going to fight for victory. They were going to fight to survive just long enough to turn the tide in their favor. Humanity's hope was slim, but it was enough to start the rebellion. Hale knew they couldn't win the first battle, but that didn't matter. What mattered was that they showed the invaders that humans were not so easily defeated. They were a species that would not go quietly into the dark of space, no matter what came next. After the alien fleet's devastating strike, Earth lay in ruins. Entire cities were obliterated as humanity scrambled to recover from the shock. The survivors moved quickly to salvage what they could. Those that were left believed the worst was over, but the truth was that humanity was far from ready to fight back. The initial devastation left their defenses shattered, leaving them vulnerable to further assault. Among the wreckage and chaos, there was a small spark of hope. Something unexpected: humanity's defiance was still alive and kicking in the most unlikely of places. A ragtag group of engineers and scientists, led by Dr. David Armstrong, had managed to recover a fragment of alien technology. After the first attack, it was small, almost insignificant at first glance. But to Armstrong and his team, it was everything: a piece of the alien ship's core reactor intact and functional. Armstrong was not a soldier, he was an inventor, but he understood the weight of what this discovery meant. This was no ordinary technology. It was far beyond anything humanity had ever conceived of. The core held the secret to near limitless energy. It could power ships for centuries without refueling. It was the very thing that might allow humanity to build a fleet strong enough to stand against the alien forces. Despite the initial skepticism from world leaders, Hale recognized the value of this discovery more than anyone else. She knew that if they could learn to reverse engineer the core, humanity could gain the upper hand, at least for a moment. It wasn't about taking back Earth. Not yet. It was about building something that could defend them long enough to create a force capable of fighting back. The recovery of the alien tech was a turning point for Hale and her forces. Desperate for a win, they began pulling resources together from every corner of the Earth. Military installations that once were abandoned now became makeshift factories. Scientists worked day and night under Armstrong's guidance to decipher the technology in secret. Every moment of progress was a victory in itself. Even if it was small, the project was humanity's last hope. Meanwhile, the alien forces assumed the humans were all but defeated. Their first strike had crushed Earth's primary defenses, and they saw no need to take further action. They focused instead on expanding their empire across the galaxy, continuing their conquest, unbothered by the remnants of the human race that they believed had been broken. But humanity was not broken. The first human-made ship, powered by the stolen alien core, was a small freighter named the Avenger. Its sleek design and strange propulsion system were a testament to the work of Armstrong and his team. It could travel faster than anything humans had ever built before, but its true power lay in its ability to take on alien technology and adapt it into something uniquely human. As the Avenger left Earth's atmosphere for the first time, there was no fanfare, no parades, but there was a quiet sense of pride among the crew. They were no longer just survivors. They were the beginning of a resistance, one that would refuse to bend before the alien invaders, no matter the odds. Commander Hale stood at the helm of the Avenger, staring out into the unknown darkness of space, knowing that this was only the first step, but it was enough. The spark had been lit, and it would burn brighter with every victory. Humanity won, no matter how small, no matter how unlikely. Their survival was now more than a dream. It was a reality in the making, and Hale would see it through no matter what the cost. The Avenger cut through the void of space, its engines humming with the stolen alien energy core's power. It was humanity's first ship capable of matching the speed and efficiency of the Council's fleet, and with it, Commander Hale and her crew now had a fighting chance. This was no longer about hiding in the shadows, hoping to survive. It was about taking action, striking at the heart of the Council's power, and showing the galaxy that humanity would not be a footnote in the history of conquest. The first mission was simple but vital: to sabotage one of the Council's supply routes. The aliens relied heavily on transporting resources between their colonies and their fleet, and with a single successful strike, humanity could disrupt their operations, making their superiority harder to maintain. The Avenger was far from the most advanced ship in the galaxy, but it was fast, stealthy, and equipped with a new cloaking device powered by the alien tech. For the first time, humanity's ingenuity wasn't simply surviving, it was fighting back. Hale's fleet, which had grown in size since the initial attack, gathered around the Avenger, each ship now armed with a mixture of human and alien technology. The crew had trained in secret, learning how to wield their new power and adapt to their unfamiliar surroundings. The hope that had been sparked by the discovery of alien technology was now being nurtured with every training session, every strategy meeting. Humanity's ability to learn, to adapt, and to improvise was beginning to show the first signs of its potential. The mission was a success beyond anyone's expectations. The Avengers slipped through the defenses of the alien fleet, using their own technology against them. With precision, the crew planted a series of explosives on a key supply ship, disabling it and causing a chain reaction that sent shockwaves through the supply line. The Council's response was swift, but not swift enough. Humanity had struck first, and the Council hadn't anticipated the tenacity of the humans who had just begun to learn how to fight their war. The victory was a small one, but it resonated throughout the galaxy. The first signs of resistance, of true rebellion, had been seen. The news of the attack spread quickly, and soon after, humanity's allies, the oppressed species across the galaxy, began to take notice. If humanity could stand against the Council, then perhaps there was hope for the rest of them. But the Council wasn't blind. Within days of the attack, they had shifted their focus to eliminating this new threat. They had underestimated humanity's capacity for innovation, but they wouldn't make that mistake again. The Council sent its most feared fleet to track down the Avenger, ready to extinguish this new fire before it could spread. Commander Hale knew the aliens would retaliate, and soon, This victory was just the beginning, and it was only a matter of time before the Council's wrath descended upon humanity with full force. But Hale wasn't worried. In the face of overwhelming odds, humanity had learned to strike with precision, to adapt, and to outwit an enemy that had once thought they were invincible. Humanity wasn't done yet. They had only just begun to rise from the ashes of their shattered world, and now they were making their mark on the stars. The galaxy would never forget the day humanity showed its true strength, that against all odds, they had fought back. The victory over the Council's supply line was a spark, but it was the fight for the Cathar homeworld that set the galaxy ablaze. The Cathar, a fierce insectoid species, had long been under the Council's thumb. Their planet, once a thriving hub of innovation and culture, had been reduced to a militarized fortress. For years, the Cathar had suffered under the Council's oppressive rule, their people enslaved and their resources stripped. But now, under the banner of the human-led rebellion, they saw a glimmer of hope. Commander Hale had spent weeks negotiating with the Cathar leadership, trying to gain their trust. Many were skeptical, knowing the Council's might and the cost of resistance. But Hale wasn't a diplomat. She was a strategist. She knew that a single victory would shift the balance of power in the rebellion's favor. The Cathar weren't just allies in this war. They were the key to unlocking more planets in the galaxy, planets that were ready to rise against their oppressors. The battle plan was ambitious. The Cathar homeworld, Khazar, was surrounded by layers of defensive shields and heavily fortified space stations. Its cities were buried deep beneath the planet's surface, each one a labyrinth of tunnels and bunkers that stretched for miles. Taking the planet wouldn't be easy, but Hale was determined. She had a plan to use the Council's own technology against them, to hack their systems and disable the defense grid long enough for a surprise strike. The human fleet, along with a growing coalition of allied species, gathered outside Khazar's atmosphere. The Cathar had given them a narrow window of opportunity, a brief moment of vulnerability when the Council's patrols were thin. It was a gamble, but it was their best chance. As the first wave of human ships broke through the atmosphere, Hale felt the weight of what was at stake. This wasn't just about saving the Cathar. It was about proving to the galaxy that humanity could lead, could inspire, and could win. The battle that followed would be brutal. The Council's warships, massive and terrifying, descended upon them in a show of force, their weapons bright and deadly. The odds were against them, and yet humanity's ships pressed on, weaving through the chaos with unparalleled precision. On the surface, the human and Cathar ground forces fought side by side. The Cathar, with their natural agility and advanced weapons, held their own, but it was the human ingenuity that made the difference. Dr. Armstrong, working in the background, had managed to implant an electromagnetic pulse device into the Cathar's main defense network, temporarily disabling the Council's shields. This opened the door for the Allied forces to strike hard and fast. For hours, the battle raged on. Human and Cathar soldiers fought through enemy lines, determined to reach the heart of the Council's command center. Hale led the charge, coordinating the ground forces and ensuring that the Cathar's most strategic positions were held. The alien forces, while powerful, were unprepared for the level of coordination and unpredictability the rebels brought to the fight. In the final moments of the battle, with the Council's fleet in retreat and their command center in ruins, the Cathar's flag was raised above the shattered remains of their capital. The victory was hard-won, but it was a victory nonetheless. The Cathar were free, and the rebellion had gained a critical foothold in the galaxy. News of the triumph spread like wildfire. The galaxy had witnessed something extraordinary. A species once considered insignificant had now led the charge in toppling the Council's iron grip. Other oppressed planets saw the Cathar's victory and realized that their own freedom was within reach. Humanity had become the beacon of hope for a galaxy long suffocated by fear and tyranny. For Commander Hale, it was a bittersweet victory. She knew this was just the beginning. The Council would come for them with everything they had, But as she stood in the heart of Khazar, surrounded by allies who had once been strangers, she knew one thing for certain. Humanity was not just fighting for survival anymore. They were fighting to reshape the galaxy. The victory on Khazar was a turning point, but it didn't come without consequences. The galaxy was alive with whispers of rebellion, and the Council was starting to take notice. More planets began to join the cause, from the rugged mining colonies of Velkar Prime to the lush jungles of Telan IV. Humanity had become a symbol of defiance, and with each victory, their alliance grew stronger. But with power came danger, both from external threats and from within. As Commander Hale worked tirelessly to unite the galaxy under a banner of resistance, there were whispers in the shadows, whispers of betrayal. Admiral Darius Zane, once a trusted leader within the human fleet, had always been a figure of authority, admired for his tactical genius and calm under pressure. But lately, something had seemed off. He had become increasingly distant, his eyes flickering with ambition that hadn't been there before. The whispers reached Hale's ears, but she dismissed them as paranoia. The rebellion was fragile, and trust was the glue that held it all together. Or so she hoped. It wasn't long before Hale's worst fears were realized. Zane had been in secret talks with the Council, offering them valuable intelligence in exchange for power. The betrayal was shocking, but not entirely unexpected. Zane, like many before him, had miscalculated the allure of control. The Council had promised him a position of influence once the rebellion was crushed, and he had been lured by their promises of glory. His betrayal nearly tore apart the fragile alliances Hale had worked so hard to build. Key military strategies, weapons locations, and the movements of the human fleet were compromised. The first sign of something wrong came when a major offensive was launched against a human base on the edge of Council space. The attack was sudden, vicious, and strangely coordinated, almost as if the Council knew exactly where to strike. Hale's forces had been caught off guard, and the damage was devastating. Several key ships were lost, and the rebellion's morale hit an all-time low. As Hale processed the loss, the truth finally came to light. Zane had been the leak. His intentions had been clear for weeks, and now his actions had put the entire rebellion at risk. Hale couldn't allow this betrayal to go unpunished, but she knew that exposing Zane would be a risk to the unity of the Alliance. The rebellion was fragile, held together by a web of trust, and the knowledge that a trusted leader had turned his back on them could unravel everything they had fought for. The decision was made swiftly. Zane had to be taken down before his influence could spread further. Hale led a covert strike against one of the Council-controlled stations where Zane had been coordinating his dealings. With a small, elite group of soldiers, she infiltrated the facility, evading the Council's detection systems and cutting through security with precision. It was a high-stakes operation, and the tension was palpable as they moved deeper into enemy territory. The confrontation with Zane was inevitable. He had anticipated Hale's move and was waiting for her, surrounded by Council enforcers. He was calm, even confident, as if he had already won. He tried to justify his actions, speaking of power and glory, of his desire to reshape the galaxy with the Council's backing. But Hale wasn't swayed by his words. With a single order, his fate was sealed. The station was taken, and Zane's betrayal was exposed to the galaxy. The loss of Zane was a blow, but it was also a rallying cry. The rebellion, though shaken, would not be undone. Humanity had shown its strength in the face of treachery. The alliance was tested but not broken. Hale's victory over Zane was a reminder to the galaxy that no matter how deep the betrayal, humanity would always find a way to rise above. Now, with Zane's death and the betrayal exposed, Hale knew they had to move forward with even greater caution. The Council would respond with fury, and there were likely other traitors in the shadows. But one thing was clear: no amount of treachery could extinguish the flame of the human rebellion. Humanity had become the galaxy's greatest hope, and they would not falter. After the betrayal of Admiral Zane, the rebellion was forced into a grueling war of attrition. The Council, fueled by their anger over the loss of their human informant, launched a series of brutal retaliatory strikes against the human-held territories. Their fleets were vast, their resources nearly limitless, and their resolve was hardened. The rebellion had made a mark, but now they would face the full wrath of the Council. The humans, already stretched thin after the losses in the aftermath of Zane's betrayal, found themselves in a constant battle to survive. Resources were scarce, and their fleet was small compared to the Council's enormous armadas. The situation was dire, but Commander Hale was resolute. The war wasn't just about defeating the Council, it was about outlasting them, making their presence inhumanly costly until the balance shifted in the rebellion's favor. For months, the humans and their allies fought small but decisive battles. The Avenger, now a symbol of humanity's resistance, led a series of hit-and-run attacks against Council supply lines. It wasn't a matter of defeating the Council outright, but denying them the resources they needed to continue their campaign. Every convoy ambushed, every communications relay sabotage, was a small victory, a blow to the Council's ability to maintain control. The tactics were far from glamorous. Hale knew that the humans could not win this war through direct confrontation. The Council's ships were far too powerful. Instead, they focused on guerrilla tactics, moving fast and striking hard before disappearing into the void. Dr. Armstrong worked tirelessly to refine their use of alien technology, developing new weapons and tools that allowed the rebels to stay one step ahead. They couldn't match the Council's numbers, but they could outwit them, outlast them, and make their forces pay for every inch of space they sought to claim. The war, though, was taking its toll. Alliances that had once seemed unbreakable began to strain under the weight of endless conflict. The Valkyrie, a species known for their stealth and cunning, had joined the rebellion early on, but their people were becoming increasingly weary. They had their own planets to protect, their own struggles to face. The Kithar, while grateful for their freedom, were still deeply scared by the years of Council oppression. As the cost of war mounted, the allies of humanity began to question whether they could continue at such a relentless pace. Humanity itself was changing too. The civilian population, which had once been focused on rebuilding their shattered world, was now fully mobilized for the war effort. Factories churned out weapons, supplies, and ships. Every able-bodied person, from scientists to engineers, joined the ranks, contributing in any way they could. Yet the toll was undeniable. The constant raids, the repeated battles, the sacrifices, they wore on the spirit of the rebellion. Commander Hale understood the stakes better than anyone. The war was no longer just a fight for survival. It was a battle for the soul of the rebellion. The human spirit, once underestimated by the Council, had proven to be resilient. But how long could it hold out against such overwhelming odds? How long could the galaxy's smallest and most chaotic species keep fighting a war of attrition with no end in sight? Then, a breakthrough came from an unexpected source. During a raid on a Council facility, Dr. Armstrong and his team uncovered a weapon of unimaginable power, a prototype for a new type of energy weapon capable of piercing even the Council's strongest shields. The weapon, still in its infancy, would require immense resources to fully develop. But it was a glimmer of hope, a tool that could tip the balance in the rebellion's favor. With the right time and place, it could turn the tide. The weapon wasn't the end of the war. It wasn't even close. But it was the edge they needed. It gave them something they hadn't had in months. Hope. For the first time in a long while, Hale saw a way forward. It wasn't just about surviving anymore. Now, it was about making the Council bleed, forcing them to stretch their forces thin, and buying the rebellion time to strike the final blow. As Hale looked out into the vast expanse of space, she knew this war was far from over. But with every battle, humanity was proving something the Council could never have anticipated. They weren't just fighting to win. They were fighting for their place in the stars, and that was a fight worth every sacrifice. The discovery of the new energy weapon had sparked renewed determination within the ranks of the rebellion, but it came with its own challenges. Dr. Armstrong's team worked tirelessly to refine the weapon, but the sheer scale of resources required to finish it was staggering. Every day, the Council's ships patrolled the galaxy, searching for any signs of rebellion and making their presence known. It was clear to Hale that time was running out. If the weapon was going to be ready, they needed to strike at the heart of the Council. Fast. The Alliance's morale was boosted by the promise of this new weapon, but the strain of continuous warfare was beginning to take its toll. The Cathar, Valkyrie, and humans had all suffered countless losses. The rebellion's leadership was stretched thin, and the constant pressure of remaining one step ahead of the Council was beginning to fray even the most experienced commanders. But in the face of their exhaustion, a new resolve had taken hold. The rebellion could not afford to fail, not when victory was within their grasp. Hale's first priority was securing the final pieces of the weapon. Hidden in a well-fortified Council research facility on the barren moon of Volsara, the energy cores necessary for completing the weapon were a key component. If the rebellion could acquire those cores, the weapon would be complete, and humanity would have the means to deal a decisive blow. The risk of such a mission was high, but Hale knew it was a risk they had to take. There could be no more delay. The mission was planned with military precision. With their combined forces, they would infiltrate Volsara's high-security compound, neutralize the Council's guards, and extract the cores. This time, they weren't just fighting to survive. They were fighting to change the entire course of the war. The night before the assault, Hale addressed her troops in the command center of the Avenger. The hum of the engines, the calculated tension in the air. It was as if the entire ship held its breath in anticipation. "Tomorrow," Hale said, her voice steady and resolute, "we go not just for victory, but for our future. This is our chance to turn the tide of this war. We can't afford failure. But I know this crew. I know you all. Together, we can do this." The troops responded with a quiet but powerful cheer. The weight of their sacrifices was evident in their eyes, but so was their unwavering belief in their cause. They were no longer just humans against a superior foe. They were fighters. They were warriors. The assault on Volsara was swift and brutal. The Council's defenses, though formidable, were no match for the tactical brilliance of Hale and her allies. The rebel fleet, with the Avenger at the forefront, disabled the orbital defenses in a well-timed strike. Meanwhile, on the surface, ground forces clashed with the Council's elite guards in a fierce, close-quarters battle. The rebellion's soldiers fought with everything they had, using the element of surprise and guerrilla tactics to keep the Council off balance. The battle for the research facility was intense. Council forces were heavily entrenched, and the facility was well guarded, but the rebels pressed on, inch by inch, room by room. Every corridor was a firefight. Every corner a potential ambush. Despite the chaos, Hale's leadership and the cooperation between the various species in the Alliance kept the assault moving forward. In the heart of the facility, Hale and her team found the energy cores, heavily guarded, but not beyond their reach. As the extraction began, a fierce firefight erupted between the remaining Council forces and the rebels. The odds seemed insurmountable, but Hale's tactical expertise and the courage of her soldiers proved to be the deciding factors. The Council forces fell back, and the cores were secured. As the mission ended and the rebellion made their retreat, Hale stood on the surface of Volsara, watching the rising dust clouds. The energy cores were now in their possession, and the weapon was nearly complete. The cost had been high. Several lives were lost in the assault, and the planet's surface had been scared by the conflict. But it was a victory, a crucial step toward toppling the Council. In the following days, as the weapon's final components were assembled, the rebellion's resolve was stronger than ever. The weapon was ready, and the time for the final assault was drawing near. Humanity's greatest hope for victory had arrived. but with it came the knowledge that the Council would not go down without a fight. The true war was just beginning, and every soul in the rebellion would have to give everything to see it through. The final piece had been placed into the weapon, and the galaxy held its breath. The energy weapon, the culmination of humanity's ingenuity and the Alliance's unity, was ready for its moment of glory. Commander Hale and her forces knew this was their last chance to shift the balance in the war against the Council. The weapon would be their hammer, its strike, their message to the galaxy that the Council's reign of terror was over. But the Council wasn't blind. They had known the rebellion was growing stronger, had known they had something in their arsenal, and now they were preparing for one final decisive strike. The rebellion's plan was to take down the Council's flagship, the Cadenza, the heart of their military power. It was the symbol of the Council's dominance, and its destruction would send a shockwave across the galaxy, signaling that no one was invulnerable, not even the mightiest empire in the stars. Hale's fleet, bolstered by reinforcements from the Cathar, Valkyrie, and other liberated planets, prepared for what would be the most dangerous mission of their lives. The Avenger, now a legendary ship, would lead the charge, with the energy weapon mounted on its hull, ready to pierce through the defenses of the Cadenza. The plan was simple: breach the Cadenza's shields, disable its weaponry, and strike at the heart of the flagship. The journey to the Council's stronghold in the Epsilon system was long and fraught with danger. The rebellion's forces were followed closely by the Council's ships, who had grown aware of their movements. But Hale knew that this final confrontation would be their defining moment. No retreat, no surrender. This was the endgame, and they would either win or perish. As they neared the Cadenza, the enemy fleet emerged from the shadows of the system's gas giant, blocking their escape route. The battle began before they even reached the flagship. The Council's ships fired relentlessly, trying to break apart the human-led fleet, but the rebellion's ships, now well practiced in the art of evasion and precision strikes, danced through the fire, dodging and retaliating. The Avenger took point, its sleek hull reflecting the flashing beams of laser fire as it moved in close. Inside the ship, the crew braced for impact. The final assault would be brutal. Dr. Armstrong monitored the weapon, ensuring it was charged and ready. His hand shook slightly as he worked, but his determination never faltered. Commander Hale paced the command deck, her mind focused, her resolve unwavering. She knew that every move, every decision, would decide the fate of billions. The energy weapon was fired, and the resulting explosion of power split the void. The blast pierced the Cadenza's shields, the energy cascading over the surface of the flagship like a wave of destruction. For a brief moment, the universe seemed to hold its breath. Then, the flagship's outer hull buckled, and its massive, imposing form began to falter. But the Council was not finished. The Cadenza's defenses collapsed, and the remaining fleet surged forward, determined to stop the humans once and for all. The rebel forces, though battered, rallied together. The true nature of the Alliance shone through as each species, united in their desire for freedom, fought side by side. The final moments of the battle were chaos incarnate. Explosions lit up the sky as Council ships fell, their crews scattering in panic. The Avenger weaved through the melee, evading enemy fire, while its crew pushed forward, determined to finish the job. The heart of the Cadenza lay just beyond reach. Hale led the final assault, her mind sharp, her leadership ironclad. They breached the flagship's command center, pushing through its last line of defense. In the chaos, Hale faced the Council's leader, a being whose face was etched in cruelty, a high-ranking general who had overseen the destruction of Earth. Words were exchanged, but there was no room for diplomacy. In the end, Hale struck the final blow. The Cadenza was crippled beyond repair, its command structure shattered. The rebellion's forces held their ground as the flagship began to fall apart, its systems collapsing under the weight of their assault. The message was clear: The Council had been dealt a mortal blow, and their empire was on the brink of collapse. As the battle subsided, Commander Hale stood on the bridge of the Avenger, looking out at the wreckage of the cadenza. The cost had been high. The battle had claimed the lives of many, and the scars of war would remain. But the war was over. The galaxy was free. Humanity, once underestimated, had shown that against all odds, they could conquer the stars. And as Hale looked out into the vast expanse of space, she knew one thing for certain. This was just the beginning of a new era. The stars no longer belonged to the Council. They belonged to the people of the galaxy.